In this video, we will continue to discuss multiplying radicals, including using the distributive property with radicals. So remember that sometimes it will be necessary for us to use the distributive property whenever we're simplifying certain problems involving the multiplication of radicals. So anytime you have a number or a radical outside of a parentheses, that's when you're going to be using the distributive property. We're still going to use the rules of multiplying, where we do the outside number times the outside number and then the inside number times the inside number. So for example, in number 1, when I distribute the 3, because the 3 is not underneath a radical, I can multiply the 3 times 4 together to get 12. Then when I distribute the 3 to the radical, I can only multiply the 3 by the 3 because those numbers are outside of the radical. So I would get plus 9 and then just bring down the square root 5 with that. And then I would look to see if I can simplify the radical any further. I can't simplify the square root of 5, and I can't add 12 and 9 root 5 since the 12 doesn't have a radical. And remember, in order to add and subtract radicals, they have to have the same number underneath the radical. So this would just be my final answer for example 1. In example 2, when I go to distribute, I'm going to multiply outside number times outside number. So 9 times 2 is 18. And then inside number times inside number. 5 times 3 is the square root of 15. When I go to distribute to the negative 2, I can do 9 times negative 2 since they're both outside of a radical. So that would give me negative 18, and then just bring the square root 5 down with that. Next, I'm going to look to see if I can reduce either radical, and I can't reduce the square root of 15. I can't reduce the square root of 5. Since they don't have the same number underneath the radical, I can't subtract them either. So that would be your final answer for example 2. In example 3, again, I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to multiply the outside number times the outside number. So 2 times 3 is 6. And then the inside number times the inside number. 14 times 2 gives me the square root of 28. Then I'm going to distribute to the next radical. So I can multiply outside number times outside number. So 2 times 5 is 10. And then inside number, 14 times inside number. So 14 times 3 is 42. Next, I'm going to look to see if I can reduce either radical. I think I can reduce the square root of 28, but I cannot reduce the square root of 42. So I'm just going to leave that one. So for 28, the perfect square number I can divide it by is 4 times 7. And then the square root of 4 becomes a 2. And I'm going to multiply that 2 by the 6 that's in front. So I get 12 square root 7, and then I'm just going to keep the second radical the same, keep it as 10 square root 42. I cannot add these together because they don't have the same number underneath the radical. So that would be my final answer for number 3. Next example, example 4, I'm going to distribute the negative 6. Now, since negative 6 is not underneath a radical, I can't multiply it by the 5, but I can multiply it by the number that's in front of the square root of 5. So technically there's a 1 here, so I'm just going to multiply negative 6 times 1 to get negative 6, and then bring down that square root of 5. Then I'm going to distribute the negative 6 to the next radical. And for this one, I'm going to multiply the negative 6 and the negative 3 together, since those are the numbers outside of the radical. So negative 6 times negative 3 would give me positive 18, and then just bring the square root of 2 down. I cannot reduce the square root of 5. I cannot reduce the square root of 2. And since they don't have the same number underneath the radical, I cannot add these together. So that would be your final answer for number 4. Next example, example 5, I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to multiply outside times outside. So 3 times 5 is 15. Then inside times inside. 2 times 5 is the square root of 10. Then when I go to distribute to the second radical, I'm going to do outside 3 times 7, which is 21. And then inside number 2 times inside number 8 is square root 16. I can't reduce the square root of 10, but I can reduce the square root of 16. That's a perfect square number. So that just becomes 4. And then I'm going to multiply that by the 21 that's in front. So I end up getting 84. And then just bring 15 square root 10 down. I cannot add these together because one of them has a radical and one of them doesn't. So they're not like terms. So that would be my final answer for example 5. In example 6, there is technically a -1 in front of the square root of 6. So when I go to distribute, I'm going to multiply the -1 and the -3 together, since those are the numbers that are outside of the radical. So I would get +3 and then just bring a square root 6 down with that. Then when I go to distribute here, I'm going to multiply outside number times outside number. So -1 times -5 is +5. And then inside number times inside number, I get square root 18. I can reduce the square root of 18. So I can break that down to 9 times 2. The square root of 9 becomes 3. And then I'm going to multiply that 3 by the 5 that's in front. So I get 15 square root 2. And then I can't reduce the square root of 6. So I'm just going to bring down 3 square root of 6. I can't add these together since they are not like terms. So feel free to reach out to your teacher with any additional questions. Your homework is just going to be to practice some more distributing radicals.